All right. Welcome back, everyone. Excited to jump into another deep dive today.
Looking forward to it.
Today, we're looking at render network. And I think this one is going to be particularly interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's got a lot going on.
It does. Render network is, and I'll try to sum this up quickly, but essentially it's a decentralized platform
Right.
that connects artists, developers, anybody really who's in need of some serious computing power.
Right.
Particularly for things like, 3D rendering or machine learning. And they've got a really interesting model using people's idle GPUs.
Yeah.
So if you've got a gaming computer sitting at home not doing anything, you can actually contribute to this network.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept, sort of like almost like a sharing economy, but for processing power.
Exactly. And, this is something that's, well, obviously we're seeing the 3D rendering world kind of explode.
It's
right?
really, yeah.
Metaverse is on everybody's mind.
Metaverse, gaming, even things like architectural visualization, product design, all that stuff requires a ton of processing power.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you've got machine learning and generative AI, also just booming right now.
Right. Huge, huge growth areas.
So Render Network is kind of sitting in this really interesting spot,
Yeah.
right at the intersection of all these major trends. And to make things even more interesting, they recently switched from the Ethereum blockchain to Solana, which I'm sure you can tell us a lot more about, but that seems like a pretty big move.
Yeah, it's definitely significant. I mean, Ethereum, obviously, it's kind of like the OG blockchain in a lot of ways. It's where a lot of these projects got started.
Right.
But, as things have developed, Ethereum's got some limitations.
Well, you hear a lot about gas fees and things like that, right?
Exactly, exactly. It's gotten very expensive to do anything on Ethereum. Transactions can be slow. So Render Network moving to Solana, I think, signals a couple of things.
Okay.
One is, obviously, they're looking for faster transaction speeds, lower costs, which is going to make it a lot easier for people to use the network, right? And then also Solana is, it's kind of the up-and-coming blockchain. A lot of people are really excited about it. So I think it's partly about, aligning themselves with that kind of, that energy, that excitement around Solana.
So it's almost a bet on the future in a sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if Solana becomes, kind of this major player in the blockchain space, Render Network is already there.
They're already there. They're already established. And, one of the things that's really interesting about Render Network is they've got some serious backing.
You do.
You look at their advisory board, it's like Ari Emanuel, J.J. Abrams, Brendan Eich, even Beeple.
Yeah. Like, how did they manage to get all these big names on board?
Right. Well, I think it speaks to the potential that people see in this project. I mean, you've got Ari Emanuel. He's a huge Hollywood power player. So I think that signals, they're serious about getting Render Network into, major film studios, TV productions.
Right.
And then J.J. Abrams, obviously, sci-fi background, big visual effects guy. So he understands, the need for this kind of rendering power. Brendan Eich, the creator of JavaScript, I mean, that's a huge, huge name in the tech world, so it brings a lot of credibility to the project.
Yeah, that's a serious resume right there.
Yeah. And then Beeple, obviously, NFT art world, huge in that space.
Yeah.
And again, that's a lot of 3D rendering.
So it feels like they're making a very conscious effort to be, kind of at the forefront of all these different industries that are going to rely on this technology.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to that point about, switching to Solana, kind of like aligning themselves with the future.
Right.
They're really trying to position themselves as the go-to platform for all this stuff.
And, I think it's interesting, too, because they're not just relying on, kind of the technology itself. They've also got this burn and mint equilibrium model, RNP 001.
Right. Which, it sounds a little complicated.
Yeah, a bit.
But essentially, it's about, managing the supply of render tokens. So, as demand for the network grows, they'll mint new tokens to kind of keep up with that demand.
Right.
But then they also have mechanisms in place to burn tokens, take them out of circulation. So it's about keeping a balance between supply and demand.
So almost like, so the token doesn't become too inflated or anything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about, ensuring the long-term sustainability of the network, which I think is a really smart move because, we've seen a lot of crypto projects. They kind of, they boom and then they bust.
Right.
And this is about trying to create something that's, more stable, more sustainable.
Yeah, it sounds like they're playing the long game here.
Definitely. Definitely.
And, one thing I've definitely noticed is that there seems to be a lot of positive sentiment around Render online.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's hard to go anywhere in the crypto space without hearing about it.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I think people are excited about the potential. Like we said, they're positioned at the intersection of all these exciting, growing trends. They've got a strong team, they've got a solid plan.
Right.
So, I can see why people are bullish on it.
I mean, there's also that whole AI meme coin thing happening right now. It seems like there's a
Ugh.
lot of, speculative interest in that area.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely interesting to see. I mean, it's not directly related to Render Network, but I think it speaks to the broader excitement around AI
Right.
and, the potential for projects like Render to kind of ride that wave. I mean, AI needs computing power. Render provides computing power. So, it's not hard to connect the dots there.
Yeah, no, it makes
It's
sense.
an interesting space to watch for sure.
Absolutely. So just to give our listeners a quick rundown of the key stats here. Render at the moment is trading at $6.98. That's up over 2% in the last 24 hours. The market cap is sitting at $3.61 billion. Circulating supply is 517.69 million out of a maximum supply of 644.17 million Render tokens.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, the all-time high was $13.60 back in March of this year.
Yeah, so definitely a project with a lot of potential for growth there, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out over the next few years, especially with all these different factors kind of converging.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, the metaverse, AI, all this stuff is still very much in its early stages, and Render Network is right there, kind of building the infrastructure for that future.
Yeah. So maybe the question for our listeners to ponder is, could Render Network actually be the platform that fuels the next generation of digital experiences?
It's definitely something to think about.
I think so. And if you want to learn more about Render, you can find a link to Binance in the episode description. That's where you can explore the world of Render and even invest if you choose.
Don't forget to do your own research.
Always, always do your own research before making any investment decisions.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for joining us for another deep dive,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll catch you next time.